It was a volume play back in the day, and I'm talking early 10 years ago. It is now an authenticity play because everybody knows when you're being authentic and when you're not. People's BS detector is tuned to 11 these days, especially the younger professionals who grew up in a world of only internet. And so you're not fooling anyone. You have to understand that's the first step.
Many intuitively know that building strong relationships and forging that true human connection, both personally and professionally, are so important. Yet that seems to be more elusive in our increasingly digital and remote world. And with COVID, everything and everyone depends on connecting with others online, amplifying the dynamics of this push behavior versus pull.
It should be clear that I'm just trying to help. Because right now we're all in a situation, the world is not as expansionary as it was. And so now it's about how many people can you help. So if I'm going to do any business, it damn well is going to be with the people that I know I can trust. So you need to be that person, and you get there by not being the person that's just trying to pound them.
So how do we break through that connection disconnection and continue to cultivate real relationships that can help propel us forward, even from the confines of our home offices? Welcome to Strategic Momentum, the podcourse with actionable tips, inspiring stories, and practical advice from progressive leaders on what it takes to break through business and career inertia and understand the business of work. I'm your host, Connie Steele. In the midst of widespread isolation, physical distancing, and global stress and anxiety, fostering human connection is more important in this COVID world than ever before. We all have had the innate need to create a social rapport with others. Yet, even now in business and the workplace, the desire for real relationships seems to have given way to a trend towards transactional ones, as it did before the pandemic. Marc Angelos is a relationship manager and former Wall Street trader who has made communication and relationship building his primary focus. A self-described people person, Marc has always used his ability to truly connect with people and build trust to help him navigate the sales process in the finance industry. He's spent the past 25 years managing senior business relationships on Wall Street, which have taken him around the world and back. In his time, Marc has authored more than 100 articles on connecting with business customers, and his writings have been featured in outlets such as Bloomberg and Traders Magazine. Presently, Marc helps professionals break down the barriers keeping them from developing meaningful relationships inside and outside of work through his communications firm, Anvictus. And today, he's here to talk about building and nurturing true connections, given the climate that we are in. Marc offers his perspectives and advice on how to cut through the noise, avoid the common mistakes people are making, and build that rapport through trust, transparency, vulnerability, and authenticity. We'll start with a look at how Marc's early experiences shaped his relationship management philosophy.
So I actually, believe it or not, graduated with a degree in history and ended up with a 25-year career in finance, Wall Street, New York City. And ironically, I'm pivoting out of that right now as we speak. But initially, my first job out of school was really working in the media. I was with HBO and Polygram Records, for those who remember back in those days. But I surely found my way into finance because, frankly, that was where the money was. Now, I didn't love corporate ever, even back then, but I found a little niche in the trading floors of New York City. It's corporate enough without being that corporate environment. And there, I slotted myself eventually as the sales front end of the technology and trading world. And I worked at, 20, 25 years at several major brokerage firms. You would know them all. Morgan Stanley, Barclays Capital, UBS. I worked for the Americans, the British, the Canadians. I worked for the French, the Brits, all of it. So anyway, the point is that I recognize that as you develop your skills, and in a world of data especially, the people end of what they do there was lacking. And that was something where I found I could bring something. And so being the technology world, the trading is all based on data, analytics, connectivity. It's speed of circuitry. In that world, especially when you're dealing with big money, I quickly realized that it wasn't so much the whiz-bang technology as the trust factor between the person pressing the button and the person on the other end of that who's going to have that order, right? So I might have the fastest algorithm in the world. And in fact, I did it. So we're talking AI type stuff. But if they don't trust you or they don't like you, they're not pressing that button, no matter what the tech is. So once I understood that, I was like, okay, that'll be my direction. I'll be the people person in a world of technology where it's really quite lacking. And there's a whole nother conversation about EQ versus IQ, which we'll skip for now. But I basically realized over time, A, the value of trust, especially between people, and B, the value of the relationship as predicated on that trust. And then the connection into communication from that relationship. And then ultimately revenue. That's it. Like that's what business is based on. And I didn't have that ever explained to me, but I realized it pretty fast that if you could build that rapport, curry it into trust, foster loyalty, that becomes repeat revenue. And so it doesn't matter what business you're in. For me, it was finance. But once I understood that, I had a lot of fun with that and went down that for probably 20, 25 years, believe it or not. And then came to realize that the pandemic lockdown happened. And I recognized, you know what? There's a value here universally because now the world has moved to remote. And as we all know, it's a lot tougher to sell anything when you can't meet the person face to face. So as a salesperson in the technology world, I had learned a bunch of lessons, mostly around content and building rapport through content that I recognized was something you can leverage. And that's the direction I'm moving in these days. But ultimately, the career for me, as much as I'm a Wall Street guy, I'm really just a people person, happen to be in that world.
Well, another really interesting thing about your background is that you were a frontman in a rock band in college.
Did you research, huh?
I did. And so I know that also probably shaped the way that you thought about engaging people, the way that you also presented yourself, and the way you knew how to relate to people just in a different way.
Sure. Ironically, I didn't make the connection for years between being a frontman in the rock band and being in sales. But there is a connection, clearly. The hardest part about being in the band, believe it or not, was not learning 80 songs. It wasn't even learning 5 songs in a day when you had short notice for a competition. It was reading the room while you were playing to adjust on the fly to what worked and what didn't work with that crowd. Because I might have done a ripper version of Bruce Springsteen and it was great, but that crowd was really in the mood to hear Guns N' Roses or whatever. And so being able to recognize, okay, the Doors worked. Let's try some Allman Brothers. Okay, let's go with some Skynyrd. That connection was really where I was like, okay, reading the room, understanding people, the back and forth rapport of what's never spoken. There's a whole world of communication there. And sales leverage that really well because you can tell right away, before we even speak, if we've met face to face, I can tell, are you open? Are you closed? Is it a situation where I need to be the authority or I need to be the person asking questions and learning?
A lot of this sounds like over the course of your career, you realize that at the end of the day, it's not the features. Yes, there are features and benefits of the product that you're selling, but you're not selling that as the lead. It really comes down to understanding the needs of the audience that you're selling to, connecting the dots and figuring out which features and benefits may fit. But it's really at the end of the day, this relationship and connection that you have with the potential prospect or existing client that draws them to you, that they want to do business with you because they know that you intuitively understand them, that you have their back.
The biggest issue I found, especially with the competitive sales guys, they'll go in there and blast away at what their product is. Nobody cares. Like they all do the thing, whatever it may be. I'll give you an example. There were situations I'd be in Europe by myself, touring 9 countries in 5 days, sitting in these oak panel boardrooms with important people, explaining how millions of their dollars, euros, are going to be at stake off of my tech. But all they really wanted to know was, forget about the 265 variables of the model it uses for the AI. It was, are you going to be the person on the phone, Mark, when I have an error and I call? Are you going to pick up the phone? Because that's all they cared about. And the answer was, yes, I'll be the person on the, okay, great. Then I'll try it. So the trust factor was first, you're selling yourself, not the product. The very first thing you're selling is you as the product. And then after that, if they buy that, they are open to then whatever else you want to talk about. But the way you start that rapport is, I have to make you understand that I understand your problem. if I go in there telling my features, they don't care. But if I go in there telling them their own problems, which they're well familiar with, that they care. That I have suddenly become relevant in their little world. And it is, oh, well, if that's the problem and you understand it, what's your solution for me?
Right. And I know just these principles and learnings that you've gained throughout the years have parlayed you into this passion for creating content around it, and that you have this prolific Instagram channel where you've done over 400 videos, these short form videos that provide these valuable tips on how to think about building rapport and it's selling in a way that's truly authentic.
So my content journey is an interesting one. As I said, I was stationed in New York, but covering Europe. So I was frequently overseas. Every 2-3 weeks, I'd be over there for a week. And everyone wanted to know what was going on in Europe. And when I'd go to Europe, they wanted to know what's going on back in the States. So there was a whole write-up I would have to do every time. And after a time, I thought to myself, well, why don't I just put this online? I'm back from Europe. Here's my 12 takeaways. I'm back in the States, whatever it might be. Here's the things that you need to know of best practices overseas. And so that quickly became a LinkedIn column. I did that every week for several years. And I cannot tell you the amount of opportunity that opened up, not just in terms of inbound business for my company, but also for job opportunity, friendships that people just wanted to know who I was, speaking engagements, being on panels for the industry, free dinners for people to pick my brain on competition. I had guys that would call me and say, I want to take you out for a cup of coffee. No one can know about this. It was a competitor. We're thinking about hiring a few people. We wanted to get your input. Now, who am I? I'm just some guy who's putting stuff on LinkedIn. However, once they understand you're a subject matter expert or they know what you're talking about, they're interested in your thoughts as it pertains to them. And so that quickly led to, okay, here's how my world of trading, my little corner of electronic trading and algorithms does this. And I'm writing about that weekly. But there's a behind the scenes to that of how do I bring that conceptually to the client? How do I connect to be able to have that conversation? And that became on Instagram because, again, I didn't think it fit with LinkedIn, but here's the things you need to know, principles that will work for you regardless of what industry you're in, how to connect with people, how to become relevant in their world, how to communicate is really what we're getting at. I'm a big believer communication is power. And as the world gets whittled down through the technology channels to AI, communication becomes the big differentiator.
Unlike most on Wall Street, Marc learned how to build rapport through content, in addition to those person-to-person interactions. And although he happened to spend most of his time in the finance industry, he knew the value of constantly taking on new roles in different companies, as it enabled him to uplevel his skills and take on new challenges in areas where he knew the cheese would be moved. And it's because of these deep connections he built within the firms he worked at, as well as his clients and even competitors, that he was able to seek out and be sought after for new opportunities.
Interestingly enough, every opportunity I ever had was from a competitor. And I switched jobs. I don't remember. You can go look at my LinkedIn 12, 15 times. And I'm talking major companies to major companies. But the point is, it was always that this person is good at what they do and the customer base loves him and we like him too. And he might be an ad for us. It was at least worth a conversation. Even though I jumped all those jobs and that was on purpose, it was always the same client base. So I covered the same folks on the buy side, as they say in the street, but like the money management community, it was the same. It remained. And by the way, if I went in your office and I'm representing Morgan Stanley, or 2 years later, I'm in your office representing Lehman Brothers, which is exactly what happened. They didn't care as much about the companies because they were close enough in product. They were close enough and they knew they both had great stellar reputations, but it was about me. And so how much did they trust me? What was the rapport they had with me? And I recognized that. And so it became, I'm not really here to compete with these people as much as I am to bond with them. I can tell you in any great business, even now, and you could comment on this as well, the competitors are out having cocktails when they can, back in the old days anyway, on the side quietly. They're all comparing notes. They all know each other. I was in a position where I could tell you every single person in my chair at every competitor around the street. So there's maybe 12 to 15 brokerage firms, major ones that do electronic trading, and each one has 3 to 5 people doing what I do. So that's a little community of buddies. And those are the folks that would say, listen, if you're not happy where you are, we could use your skills over here. So what I'm doing now, I like to call it communications. Most people would consider it content marketing, but I don't think so, because if you think of content is now the new visit with your client. And the world of traditional world of content marketing is about pounding people for prospects and leads. And that is not what I'm talking about. What I'm helping people do right now, I help businesses create rapport with their own existing customers to develop repeat business. So the premise is that loyalty equals revenue. That's the thing. And so how do you develop that loyalty? Everyone's got a way to capture the new lead. And once you've got a customer, what are you doing to bring them value on an ongoing basis? And the answer, unfortunately, for most businesses is not much. So the 3 rules of developing a tighter business rapport, we'll call it, either with your competitor or your clients or whomever, is create value. If you're not delivering them value on a consistent, ongoing basis, the relationship will suffer. If you are, yeah. And when you are, they always want to hear from you. And there's simple things to this. Brief. If I hit you with a value bomb and I'm out, you're like, well, dude, I would have loved more of that. Next time I call, you're taking that phone call. If I have good intent, if I reach out to you to help you with something where there's absolutely zero chance of me benefiting, you recognize that I'm simply trying to help you. That carries a lot more weight than, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Marc's career journey has been shaped by the relationships he's been able to develop over the years. And in building them, he's learned a lot about making genuine connections. It starts with trust, which comes from reading the room, acknowledging what your audience wants, and then showing that you care about what they want through your delivery, just like in a rock band. Even now, he's adjusting his delivery based on the people he wants to connect with. In a digital world, he's moved to digital channels to provide that value people are looking for. And though Marc's focus has been in sales and finance, his learnings on creating value apply to everyone in any area or industry. One thing that you said was the importance of stressing value. And I think in the times that we're in now, when you show value, that establishes a human connection. And we all recognize that human connection is really important, particularly in this times of COVID and the digital world that we're living in. Yet this desire for real relationships seems to have given way to transactional ones. We see it all the time. And honestly, that was even happening before the pandemic. So what are your observations around what relationship development and even networking is like now?
Yeah.
You can even say pre-COVID and now during this virtual world.
You're right. So I'll tell you this. The thing about value is you don't get to pick what's value. You don't decide for them what's their value. People have what's valuable to them, and it's your job to know what it is. If I want to connect with you, I need to do my research. It's literally research. And there's no excuse right now in a world of online. I can get everything I need to know. The way you know I was in a rock band, I can find out what college you went to, et cetera, et cetera. So if I'm bringing you value of something that you might think is valuable, that's going to build relationship. When I was home doing the beginning of the pandemic and talking to clients, and you're trying to sell, quote unquote, when everyone's literally fearful for their lives. You will remember this. It was a matter of how are things with the family first before you got to the business. And sometimes that would stretch for an hour. Some guy's telling me his wife's been laid off and his aunt is sick and they're not sure and they're concerned about the children. And we never got to the business. So you would argue that's a failed sales call. But I would argue that was a value creator because he wanted to talk and he wanted to connect. And that chance to just listen showed him I wasn't just there to sell him something. And so a lot of these people, there's tons of guys now that I'm friends with that have left the business years ago. And I'm still buddies with them because they're good guys. People that you got to know, that you got to appreciate. And that thing about connecting now in a time of COVID, lockdown, post-pandemic sales, as I like to call it. This is all about how do I connect first? And maybe that's it. Because there's a lot of situations where businesses cannot do the business right now. And that's okay too. Yes, we all want to get paid, but that time will come. Again, if they don't want to pay you, they're not going to, even when they can. And your job is to make them want to. And that's not a tactic. It's not that I have to trick you into wanting to. It's that I need to actually form a rapport where you value me and you seek to help me do what I need to make money, and I'll do the same for you. And that's a little back and forth. That bridge, once it's built, it only gets stronger. The hard part is getting to the piece where okay, I'm going to authentically deliver value for this person with nothing, no ask in return. And they may or may not respond. That's the game right now. It's about what am I doing for you, not so much what you can do for me. Now that sounds all pie in the sky and everyone's going to be like, great, yeah. How do I do that? The answer is you dig into this person. Who are they as a person? What can you do for value on the personal level, not just the business level? If I know that your son is a DJ, or if I know that you used to be you were in a rock band, there's a whole bunch of stuff I can do with that would be of interest conversationally. Things that you might, and I'm not talking about buying them things, and I'm just talking about making a connection. There's a whole world of Star Wars nerds out there, which I'm one of them. And the minute you connect they've got a Millennium Falcon Lego in the background, you're in. And now this person's got something in common and that's it. So your job is to, on the fly, understand who they are and have done the research prior. So hopefully you've got a leg up on that. And then have the personal sensory acuity, I'll call it, to adjust on the fly. It's that you have to be able to read people. You have to be able to deliver what you think they're going to want and then adjust as that works or doesn't work. And it's not so much a game where you're trying to play them. It's that you really want to connect with these people. I better start every situation where I hope to one day be friends with you, Connie, long after we're doing business together. Like I'm going to be on a balcony in Florida having cocktails in my 90s, and I might want you there with me. And that may or may not happen, but I have to approach it with that mental mindset because that's the whole basis of real friendship. And that's what this is.
Why do you think people aren't thinking that way? I mean, we see it all the time in the communications that we get in our email inbox with people prospecting, or we see it in LinkedIn messages or in any other digital forms of communication where you can tell it's very transactional. And candidly, even when there have been in-person meetings that you have, it's very clear from the beginning that the other individual is making it about them. It's moved towards, again, a very transactional type of dynamic. So why is that?
I can tell you exactly why. So now I come from a world of AI, algorithms, data analytics. Okay, I'm the front end people person, but that's my world where I lived 25 years. That whole thing of algorithms and analytics is having its moment in the sun right now. The world is run by metrics. And I like to call it the religion of data or the cult of analytics, whatever you want to call it. And that is because it's measurable, Connie. It's measurable. How can you measure the touch points? Can I measure how many emails you opened? Yes. How long did you read? How long were your eyes on the video? I can measure all that. But how do you measure loyalty? How do you measure the rapport I've built with you where you're not going to trade with me right now or transact, but you're going to come hell or high water in 3 months when you finally get the budget for it? That's the thing, because we live in a world of measuring and marking and metrics, and that's not how this type of soft skill EQ thing works. The difference between digital marketing as it used to be, which is outbound pound and then have some small percentage conversion ratio. So I know that if I get a 1% conversion, it's only a numbers game for how many people I got to hit up on LinkedIn, and you know about that. Or real marketing, which is building a rapport. And this is marketing itself is about messaging, right? It's about connecting. This is a breadth versus depth game. And so if I'm just looking to push and pound, which is the world we're in right now, then yes, it's about maximize that number. But what I'm talking about is real rapport and connection where you can leverage it. And that's going to have to be the few people that would really come into your house in the middle of the night, like I said. It's because we live in a world of data and metrics, and they don't know how to measure loyalty.
The lack of building that true rapport in today's digital as well as physical world comes from the pressure to measure the business impact of those connections. The more people you reach out to, the more hits you theoretically should get, and the faster you should hit your intended outcomes. Yet conversations where you're working to build that bridge with them don't immediately end in some measurable action like a sale. But they're also not void of value. It's about the long game, or really not even the game. It's creating that village of people who you can help and eventually may help you too when you need it. So what's important to always consider when it comes to establishing those relationships with your coworkers, customers, or even competitors?
So we've all worked for the old time crotchety boss who was like, get up out of your chair and go talk to the person. And that's what people aren't doing anymore. Getting up out of your chair, I recognize we're all working from home right now, or many of us are. Getting up out of your chair means making the outbound push to touch base with them for nothing, for no reason. I just wanted to check and see how you're doing. And that's not necessarily with a client. That's a double-edged sword. That can hurt you. I'm talking about checking in on people that you used to work with, people that you think you might be able to help, people that you, for whatever reason, just want to be able to keep a closer connection with. And that shouldn't always be the secondary ulterior motive to that. It should be clear that I'm just trying to help. Because right now we're all in a situation, the world is not as expansionary as it was. And so now it's about how many people can you help.
Absolutely. Let's say just people wanting to build closer connections with coworkers. So not even in a situation where you are selling to anybody, but you're just trying to establish tighter relationships with people that you work with in your existing company. Because I think that has also, because everybody's working from home, the ability to do that has somewhat diminished, or they feel stuck on how to evolve and try a different way to build that connection. So do you think a lot of that is, besides the fact they may not know, do you think there's a bit of a fear of reaching out in a different way?
I think everybody's in a frozen moment right now. They're all worried about themselves, and I get that, but that's your opportunity, right? This is a situation where you can touch base with someone with something as simple as a story, right? That's a big, the connective power of story has been well researched. Hey, I thought of you, Connie. I came across a situation and I thought you might find this funny. All of a sudden, Connie's, oh, that's great. Yeah, there's no ask here. That was entertaining. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you thinking of me. There's a situation where I can help you in a non-work situation. Hey, I know that your son, friend, cousin's husband, whatever, is starting a new thing or doing whatever. And I was thinking this might be of value to them. Did they see this article? Did you know about this development? There's a new entrant in your space, whatever it may be. You want to be able to be something of an advisor / consultant for your coworkers, for your customers. Treat these people like friends, and after a while, you become friends. It's always, what can I be doing for them? You should be thinking this constantly if you're a client-facing person. But even if you're not, the other coworkers in your business, and they may not be in your office, they are your customers. Because I learned early on, if it is a problem with a trade, my business back in the day, trades took 3 days to settle. And there was only so many things that the back office, person is working on. And if yours isn't one of them, it's going to be at the end of the line. However, if I stopped by, made them laugh a little bit, bought them a cup of coffee every now and again, you can call that bribery, you can call it whatever you want, but there is something to be said for, hey, I like Mark. This is Mark's customer. I'm going to make sure this thing gets done right. And that approach, you can do that with people you don't work with. You can do that with the New Jersey Transit. I took the train back in the day, and a few minutes of conversation, and the conductor, and pretty soon, if you're forgetting your past, they let you on the train anyway. Like, we all know this. Everyone does this in their everyday life. They just don't think they should be doing it now because they're worried about their own skin. Now is when you should be doing it, because this is when it really counts. People remember when you reached out in that one time, when you're nervous, when you're worried, when you're concerned about your own job, and they're hitting you up for, hey, here's some opportunity potentials. Hey, here's something, I don't know if you thought about this. I did think of that, Mark. Thanks anyway, but it was nice that you thought of me. That's what we're getting at.
I think that's a great point that you bring up, and such a misconception that many people have. But I think many think of their coworkers as their competitors or their vendors. And so they're treated differently. And it's also transactional, because unless they see how their coworkers can help them, again, this one-way relationship versus a two-way relationship, then the level of effort that they'll put into it will be more digital, will be a little more programmatic.
And you'll relate to this, Connie. We're in a world now where it's not as linear as it used to be, right? Careers.
Absolutely.
And so the tables turn frequently now. I've worked with guys that have reported to me that later I reported to them, a different company. I've worked with people, I thought to myself, I can't stand this person, but keep your mouth shut. And sure enough, they're your pod mate for the next 2 years of the next thing. And so that's happening on a rapid basis now. People that you are currently working with, whether you like them or not, you may well be in business with them. They may be your customer. I have one of our mutual friends he's been both my competitor, my boss, and my customer at different times of our relationship.
That's crazy.
That's true. But that's fairly typical now. And so the concept of business is changing so fast, and forget about the lockdown. Like that's even another X factor. But things are changing so fast out there that you need to recognize that all you have is your skill set and your relationship. And that skill set could be the hard skills, like the IQ stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But the relationship is a factor. You darn well better not be on anyone's blacklist, number one. And number two, you should always be assessing what kind of a player is this person. If I'm working with someone, I'm thinking in the back of my head, would I hire them? Would I want to work for them? Because you might find yourself in one of those two situations within 6 months. And so always be thinking ahead of how the road bends. You're not going to see all the curves. Obviously, 6 months ago, nobody saw this coming. And now, all of a sudden, people are spinning out and forming their own companies out of the corporations that they used to work. I cannot tell you how many customers I have right now that are finance guys doing this on the side. It was their side hustle gig that no one knew about, and they need marketing help. And so the point is, I didn't know they were doing that, but now I had a good rapport with them, and now they need help, and they know me, and they know I can do this, and so on. And so that's the whole thing where you're not going to see all the curves in the road, but you won't have to. If you're building this type of armor, if you will, you're protected against these turns. The world has changed. As of 6 months ago, it now matters. We're in a reactionary time. Everyone's pulling in their horns, right? These businesses don't want to take a chance on a new provider, vendor, servicer, whatever. They want to know, I don't have my hands around what this new work from home thing is yet. So if I'm going to do any business, it damn well is going to be with the people that I know, like, and trust. So you need to be that person, and you get there by not being the person that's just trying to pound them.
A major part of building trust is reliability. As Marc said, in these uncertain times, businesses are falling back on partners and vendors who they know they can count on. And it's the same within your own business. You can strengthen your relationships with coworkers by proving your reliability. Be the ones your peers can count on, but also have that consistency. You'll never always know what lies ahead, but if you've been the person that has viewed everyone as their valuable customer, then your relationships won't be seen or interpreted as transactional. And that always starts with asking how you can help with no expectation of anything in return. So what else are people getting wrong when it comes to establishing new relationships or even deepening existing ones?
It's the me, myself, and I problem. I'm always challenging myself in the ego department, meaning it's about how much can I get out of it? And that's what I'm thinking of. And that's the hole everyone steps in. It's because that's what drives you to be pushy, to be relentless, quote unquote, all that hustle. It sounds great until you're driving people away. If I've got ulterior motives and they're clearly not your interests first, that's going to drive people away. There's a lot of things that people will do because it's about the selfish aspect. And this is content marketing is best at this. You know this. In a digital world, that's all there is. Social media, I don't need to tell you this. Every single post on LinkedIn is, take a look at our product. Take a look at the awards our people have won. Hey, we got a new thing coming out. That's not helping. That's not value add. Value is at your own detriment helping someone else sometimes because they will find the opportunity to pay you. So the connection disconnect is, I'm just worried too much about myself. This goes back to put others' interests, do unto others. Like, do this, put others' interests first, and you will be shocked at how quickly they look to help you. And if you don't do that, you've got a situation where everyone's trying to me themselves. And that's where we live in social right now. But that's the problem. So how do you stand out in that world? Deliver real value. Make real relationship. Actually care. Like, actually give a crap is not the same as me pounding you and telling you how great I am. I should never be reaching out to you, first off, unless I'm bringing you value. If it's about the value to me, it's a non-starter. That's done. But if there is value there, if I touch base with Connie Steele and I tell you, hey, Connie, I really liked your podcast episode on X. I learned 1, 2, 3, 4 points. You will immediately say, okay, the person at least knows me. So you'll continue reading. There's context there. I've contextualized who I am to you. The next part is, what do you want? I think I might be able to help you with this, or you might need the whatever. And how you phrase that matters a lot. This is the power of communication now. Words matter. where it's really, if I tell you it's curiously dark outside or it's ominously dark outside, there's a difference there in context. And phraseology is an art. There's a reason that copywriters get paid so much. You need to be able to phrase what you're saying in a manner of their interests. Everything has to be phrased. You should never have the letter I in anything you send to anybody. And so the final part of that is, once you've contextualized who you are, you've told them why you matter to them in terms of their world and the problems that they have, you can then thank them for their time. Be brief, be bright, be gone. I love that one because nobody cares. Everyone knows you want to connect and you're going to want to pump me with some information later on. You're going to sell me on something. That's not of interest to folks. But if there's a connection there where I might be able to get some value from this person down the road, yeah, people are selfish. And so you should be selling into that. I think, and there's nothing wrong with that because again, if you're benefiting them, then that's to their interest. At the end of the day, it's about a value exchange. If I've brought you value, you'll bring me that connection I'm seeking with you. But if I'm just looking for connection and there's no value trade, you're not interested in that.
Understanding and mastering the value exchange is a critical part of relationship development. And it's something we talked about with respect to business development with John Keeling way back in episode 25. The key is letting go of the me first mentality and literally removing the word I from your messages. Be brief, be bright, be gone, as Marc says. Or be personal, useful, and brief. As Aaron Gargan-King told us in episode 40, it's about putting the other person's needs and wants first, even if there's nothing in it for you. But before you enter the conversation, know what value you intend to deliver to them, because if it's the other way around, then it's a non-starter. So what additional myths and misconceptions do people have when it comes to establishing real relationships? As it seems it's become about quantity over quality.
It was a volume play, Connie, back in the day, and I'm talking early 10 years ago. It is now an authenticity play because everybody knows when you're being authentic and when you're not. If you're just another person on the list, you can tell. I think it was Bob Seger. I feel like a number. Love that song. It's the authentic nature of the communication will come through. And that could be good or bad. It could hurt you. But if I'm authentically trying to just get through this list to get Connie on my subscriber base so I can pound her later, you're going to know that. People's BS detector is tuned to 11 these days, especially the younger professionals who grew up in a world of only internet. And so you're not fooling anyone. You have to understand that's the first step. The premise of they won't know doesn't exist. Everyone knows everything. You're naked in the world and the internet. Great. From there, I can actually leverage that authenticity to my favor by looking out for your interests first. Nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to have their secret sauce and nobody wants to give away the farm and they all want to be able to charge for it. That's not how it works anymore. Information itself is worthless in a Google world. I can find out anything I need to know. It is, what else can you do of value for me besides tell me about something? And that has to do with things like leveraging my network, lending my creativity to your business in a manner that maybe you hadn't thought. That's an interesting strategy. I might have contacts that you've either used or might want to use. There's things where I should be thinking this through before I even reach out to you. And you on the other receiving end of that can tell immediately if I've thought that through or not. When someone pings you, hey, saw your profile, looks like we should connect. You already know, okay, yeah, I read what you're writing and I think we shouldn't connect. And so that's where it comes down to, before you think this is a spam thing, I just want you to know, I really feel this might be of value to you. And that's what the person's going to decide. Is it or is it not? And then what's the authenticity on that? Is there real value? Even if there's no value, but it was authentic, I might be interested in connecting with this person. And I appreciate your thought. I recognize that you're thinking about my situation and that even though that's a suggestion I might not use, I liked where you were going with that. Let's chat. And that's the thing where it used to be over a cup of coffee. Now it's done through content. And this, by the way, is a perfect example of it, Connie. People get a feel for you through the content you put out there. And that all they're thinking is, yes, I can get that information, but I want to get it from Connie. And I like the authentic relationship I've built with Connie through the content. And that's the part where repeating the process reinforces it. But the initial one is tough. I'll grant you that. There's going to be times where you're going to authentically reach out to people. You're going to say all the right things and do all the right things. And they're going to tell you to pound sand. And you can't take it personally. This is the way it goes. This is life. Because over time, the proof is in the pudding. It all comes out in the wash. If you're a good person and you're trying to deliver value repeatedly to the same folks, they will spot that. Now, if you're trying to deliver value repeatedly because you want to get something out of them, like a service order or whatever, or a trade, they'll also know that. And because everything is open and naked on the internet, as I said, you can just call a spade. Hey, I'm contacting you because I wanted to bring value in this and this. Now, they already know what you want. Don't deny it. Don't be like, I just want to be your best friend so we can. But that's okay if you've brought them real value. Hey, Connie, here's some thoughts for you in the podcast, or here's some thoughts for, and then they're going to get to, and not in these words, but what is it you want, Mark? Every salesperson knows that all the good stuff happens at the end of the conversation. There's going to be 10 or 15 minutes of catching up and how's the family and the kids and And at the very end, oh, by the way, boom. That's it. That was the reason for the call. It all happened in 30 seconds after a 15-minute conversation. And that matters. How you do that matters. But there has to be value, and there has to be someone who recognizes that you're being authentic in that delivery attempt. That's where I think that folks go wrong. It's either they don't take the time to build that rapport first, or they cut right to the whole, this is what I can do for you, and this is what I need from you. And there's that transactional feel that you were just talking about. Transactions can be measured, right? We're back to the data thing. Transactions will bury you. Because if you get the first part right, you'll have all the transactions you can handle. Nobody cares to buy what you have because you have to sell it. It's that, what do you have that would really bring value? And the answer may be nothing. The answer may be just me. Maybe I can curate some information and research some stuff about your business that might be of value to you, and I have no product that I can sell you in it. If I'm becoming your educational piece, like I educate you on the macro of your own business, I keep an eye on things like new competitors in the space, things you need to know, evolving regulations, how the technology is shaping up. Like these are the things that you should know and probably do know, but might not know all of it. And so I become your eyes and ears, which makes me, quote unquote, the repository of information. Right? At that point, you now start to rely on me. Now, these aren't things that I'm getting paid for. Not yet, anyway. I might help you strategize. Delivering someone their strategy, they can always tell you to go shove it, but they want to hear it, I assure you. Have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing that? What would happen if you did this? Explaining things that are very complex in a simple manner. I made a living for 20-something years taking artificial intelligence algorithms and making people understand them with Star Wars analogies and Matrix and Marvel. And that's funny, but it worked because people said, I understand how the machine thinks, Mark, and I like you, so I'll give it a shot. Spotting trends. So my point is helping other people in these areas. They're intangibles. It's not that my product will help you be more efficient or my product will save you money. It's not that. It's I, as Mark, can help you as Connie. And you happen to do that, and I'm right now doing this. But guess what? In the long term, you might not be there and I might not be here, but it's okay because we're still going to have each other. That's the value.
As we've heard here and in previous episodes on relationships, what it really all comes down to is being helpful, authentic, and delivering value in whatever form you can. But to do so, it also requires preparation, as Mark mentioned earlier. Learning about who they are and what needs they have, as well as potential solutions you can offer, which may or may not be even related to what you even do or sell. But we've seen that many people still aren't doing that correctly, even in this new world where everything is virtual. So how else can people demonstrate this authenticity and build trust online versus reaching out to connect just to connect? What's your opinion on how people are trying to establish these connections, specifically on LinkedIn and even other social channels where they're not taking the time to prepare? It's more just, I'm going to just connect with you with no context, no value exchange, no nothing. And some people feel that it really is about increasing that number. It's increasing that connection number.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And if I'm going to reach out to someone, I better be able to have a 5-minute conversation about something in that person's past. 5 minutes, full on, like this, live. If I can't, then I can't claim that I've done my legwork and they'll know that. And so this goes back to your goal. What is your objective here? If your goal is to simply maximize how many connections you have so you can spam the crap out of them, I assure you, a losing strategy long-term because of things like COVID, layoffs, economy changes, presidential policies. These things come out of the blue and that changes stuff rapidly. And that's where your 5,000 connections becomes 1,000 or your 10,000 Instagram followers become 2,000. And so if I can't have that 5-minute conversation, I don't deserve the connection. By the same token, a lot of people think that it is just a numbers game and that social has really encouraged this by stamping a number next to your name. And that becomes your quote unquote elementary school grade, right? You got a B and I got an A, that's a problem for you, or vice versa. So if I've got 10,000 followers and you've only got 9, that's the game that they want. Now, granted, that benefits those platforms, right? This is about advertiser dollars, but it doesn't benefit the person. So you have to not get sucked into the game. How many of your connections right now on any of those platforms, you have no idea who these people are. You don't even remember where they came from in terms of who in your connection got them connected to you. And so that game doesn't play long term because what will end up happening is either they're going to block you, you're going to block them, or you're just not going to ever talk to them. And what's the point of a connection if you've never spoken with them? Connections it's been gamified. It's much like Vegas did to the casino. This whole thing of, I'm just going to grow my connections. Why? So I can sell them more later. That's not relationship based. I would argue that relationship selling is the only kind of selling that exists now. Social proof. We're back to everyone's at home. The last thing anybody wants is to be pounded. The social proof demands that I have a connection with you before I'm going to transact anything with you. So the width of my connections, how many I've got, doesn't matter anymore. What matters is I know, like, and trust that person. And so that's the connection game. That's where I might not have a great, is it Seth Godin talks about the 1,000 true fans? I might not have 20,000 folks. But if I have 1,000 people that want to do business, that are going to find a way. I'll tell you, I follow Gary Vaynerchuk and a lot of people know him. And he's from my area nearby here. And maybe a year, 2 years ago, he gave a talk at the wine library, his dad's wine shop. And I had consumed a bunch of his content. And so 50 people paid $400 to sit there for 2 hours on a Saturday morning. I was one of them. I paid $400 to hear answers to questions I could have already answered because I'd watched all that content. Why would I pay $400? Because I just want to say thanks. I wanted to pay him back for the content. I felt a value and I was okay sharing that. And in the end, ironically, for the folks who were there, they'll tell you this. He said, I feel guilty about taking hundreds of your dollars for just talking for 2 hours. So here's a free case of wine. And he had some custom wine that he had delivered for us. So that was great. The point is, connection matters. The depth of that connection is what's going to determine your success. No one's thinking that way. They're all trying to play checkers when the game is really chess. And so if you can curry your connections, make sure that your connection, that there's value transfer. And I mean real value, not you've got something from and they didn't get anything from you. It's value back and forth, right? It used to be go to work. Now it's not go to work. It used to be the economy's growing. Now it's not growing. Things are on the fly. I'm looking at the way school is changing. I don't need to tell you. Any parent out there knows this whole Zoom school thing. There's a lot going on there. This is changing. So all those teachers, who's good at what they do, who's not good at what they do, which parents might they want to work for in a backyard pod? Which teachers do you trust that are doing the right by your child? That was always the case. There's a whole personal connection world of things that are going to go beyond what you're currently doing with that person. And so width of connections doesn't get you there, but depth does. And that's the part that a lot of folks don't know yet. They'll find it out. You're not going to convince the unconvincible. You're just going to have to do your thing, do it the right way, and make sure you can lean on your connections when you need to, because you will. But the folks who are going to lean on those ones that don't have a solid foundation of connectivity with the folks that they're connected to will find out the hard way. I didn't really know 50,000 people. I only knew a couple. Because if they're not going to make the phone call for you, there's no point in contacting them.
So when depth of a connection is paramount, how do you achieve that depth when you're meeting someone for the first time online? For instance, when a friend or colleague puts you in touch with one of their contacts, and especially if you're introverted or have social anxiety, you're hit with both the anxiety of meeting someone new and the anxiety of a virtual meeting all in one.
So I would say, number one, address the elephant in the room. You are uncomfortable doing this. You can lead with that. Hey, Connie Steele thought that we might want to talk to each other. Connie said to give you a call. Frankly, I'm uncomfortable with this stuff because I'm not really great, but here comes the value piece. I thought that maybe you would understand, you might want to hear what I have to say about blah, 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 whatever. You're going to deliver some piece of value there, but you've acknowledged my point being that I'm not comfortable and this is not my thing. But I'll even get to one earlier than that. 10 seconds before you do that, or even afterwards, even better, you have a chance to deliver value in just relationship-wise. You're not actually there to just pound them. You're going to say something like, I'm reaching out to you because Connie said that you were familiar with blah, blah, blah. And I'm not comfortable asking this, but I need to learn about that. But I wanted to ask what I could do in response to help you as well. So I want this to be a value exchange. I don't want to just take your time. When you're honest like that, who's going to say, yeah, I don't have time for you right now. I'll see you forever. They're going to say, if I can help this person, I will. I don't really want to, but you know what? If for no other reason, Connie's a friend, I'll use, fine. Yeah, here, Mark, here's 5 minutes of my time. I feel like if it's value, you're caring, you really show that you're caring. Like, I don't mean to take your time. I recognize the value of what I'm doing. I'm stealing your time, basically. And integrity. If I bring integrity to it, I'm being as forthright as I can, Connie. This is not my forte. I really don't like doing this, but I'm in need. I'm asking for your help. And Connie pointed me to you. He's going to say, all right, what is it? What's the issue? And then comes the really important part. After that uncomfortable thing is done, follow up. This is going back to sending the old thank you letter like your mom would make you do. Or after a job interview, when you type that up, make sure you get it back same day. If you can do something for them, and this is the research piece, if you can do the follow-up that makes them say, it's a good person. They just launched their own business and you've given them a bunch of information about what they're up to. I'll give you an example. Back in the old days, there was the concept of the baker's dozen. You'd be familiar with this. In the old world, the baker gave their regular customer an extra roll or whatever it was just to say thanks for the business. You can still do that digitally. And you don't have to do it up front. You can do it after the fact, but you got to do it. That's the part that shows you're delivering the value with real caring and real integrity. And that's the separator. Because how many people are getting pinged or called just because so said to contact you and I need some information? Everybody. That's the game is acknowledging you're not comfortable with it, leading with some form of value, thanking them for their time. This is back to the niceties. And following up in a manner that makes them say, wow, they did some research on me. Because if I say thank you through a thought out, well-researched, complimentary piece of information I didn't need to send you, but I did, you're going to say, I'm glad I spoke with that person. I don't mind having that connection. And that opens the door for future conversation. Or maybe even better, they reach out to you at some point. Hey, we spoke last Thursday or last year or 2 years ago. I'm Connie's friend. Oh, yeah. Well, what can I do? Well, I need help now. Okay, great. I'm all ears. Let's do it. That's where you're casting bread upon the water. In some ways, you don't even know that by asking people for help and approaching them with that discomfort, it still can set you up later for a relationship. So any kind of engagement, even if it's uncomfortable, creates a rapport, good or bad. And then that gives you the chance to build on it. So face the discomfort, try to deliver value, be honest about the whole thing. You're not going to hide what you're asking for, and follow up in a manner that makes them say, you know what, like I enjoyed my communication with that person.
What I think is really insightful is just this whole notion of being really transparent, because I don't think many feel like that's something that you do. I mean, to convey those vulnerabilities that you're feeling or these insecurities that you're feeling, nobody wants to admit that. But it's interesting how you're recommending really this somewhat systematic approach to showing how you can be transparent. You can be vulnerable in such a way that it's not putting you in a bad light or anything. You're just really trying to show that you're being open and honest, and it demonstrates this level of integrity and hopefully credibility too. Because if you have that social proof, then they'll be able to tie that all together, assuming they're going to do the research on you to figure out who you are.
So this is back to the transparency then. Transparency and vulnerability, as you call them, and I like those terms, that becomes your differentiation in a world of, look at me, I'm great. So number one, yes, be transparent as a differentiator. But number two, you can practice this. You can say, I'm not comfortable with this. And you go out of your way to put yourself in uncomfortable contacts, conversations that you might want to go through the contacts of your contacts and just say, hey, I'm only reaching out to try to deliver a little bit of value, no ask here. And they're not going to believe you. But when you get off the phone call or the Zoom or whatever, and there was no ask, they'll be like, they're going to go back and reach out to their other mutual contact and be like, what was that about? I don't know. Oh. So now they're curious. And the third part is being authentic. This is back to this again. You can differentiate yourself with the transparency. You can practice. And as long as it's authentic, it'll work. But if it's not authentic, that person reached out to you because they're launching a new thing and they need your client list, is very different from, I don't know, but I think they were just trying to help you. Huh. Okay. Right? There's definitely going to be a follow-up conversation on that one at some point. So it's no different from learning how to ride a bicycle. How do you learn to ride that bike without falling and getting scraped up? You don't. If you're not comfortable reaching out to people, and many people are not, I would argue most people are not. I'd even argue it's a generational thing. The older folks are not. But if you're not comfortable reaching out, especially through Zoom, face-to-face, the best thing you can do is reach out to people through Zoom, face-to-face. Like a big tip, trick, whatever I like to do, when I message people, I'll oftentimes use the video and just send them a 5-second message on video other than just texting them back or sending an emoji or the GIF. It's, hey, Connie, I got your message. We'll call you back in a few. Sorry, I'm driving the kids to school right now. Boom, video. You get that and you're like, back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, am I supposed to video him back? But that's where you start to acclimate people to you and you acclimate yourself to video, right? This is a skill. In a world of remote selling or even remote relationship connection, a world of remote, it's time to start practicing with the skills we used to need with the times tables. That's now includes video. Like it's part of the world. And it doesn't have to be just video. You've made quite the career here with audio. Like you can do it, but you need to learn to communicate through channels, whether it's going to be voice, audio, or text, written word. It doesn't matter, but you have to start getting good at it because that's how communication happens. Now, in person, that's all the better. There's a whole nother world of studying body language and NLP and all that. I'm not here to talk about mirroring and matching and all that bit. It's the same concept, though. You need to skill up in the areas of digital. And that's got nothing to do with marketing. That's just business now.
In the end, building that true human connection with others comes down to transparency, vulnerability, and authenticity to plant those roots. But what does it really mean to be authentic at the end of the day?
So if you were to define authenticity, which we talked about, but I think even though you provide all these examples of value exchange and some other context, but I'm curious if you have sort of a succinct way for people to understand what does it truly mean to be authentic? Because no matter what we see, I think people, while they intuitively get it or intellectually get it, the execution of it,
I'll give you a real simple
rare.
handle on this thing. Everyone likes the term authenticity. It's one of those buzzwords for the internet, right? It's the old days, we would have called that being honest to a fault. That's what authenticity is, Connie. It is, I am a Star Wars nerd underneath. I was a Marvel guy. And then when I sell my AI trading technology on Wall Street, I'm in a suit and tie. So I'm supposed to be the buttoned up guy. I'm not supposed to be shooting 400 videos on the subway telling people about how these things work using Captain America as the example. But that's authenticity. Like, I'm not here to apologize for who I am. It's not for everyone. You might not like me. That's okay. I can't help that. But I'm not going to be all things to all people anymore. The days of mass appeal are over. Now it is Connie Steele will appeal to Connie's people, and Marc Angelos will appeal to Marc's people. But there may not be overlap in that, and that's all right. People aren't comfortable with that concept. But being honest to a fault means I'm sharing all I am. This is I'm out there telling you what I do, and this is the part where you got to practice because no one likes doing this. It's very uncomfortable. It's very similar to learning how to talk to a boy or a girl in high school, right? You just got to muster up the courage and talk to the world through whatever medium you like best and be you. Everyone's got a snazzy website. Everyone's got a great little front end of whatever they're doing. But how many people are sharing the bits about them that they're an adventure junkie, that they're a coffeeaholic, that they are, I drive nothing but Jeeps. I'm a Jeep guy. Like those little things now become the differentiators and the distinctions of who I want to connect with. If I am talking about trading on Wall Street and I'm a Jeep guy, I'm going to connect with the guys who like Jeeps and trade on Wall Street. But I'm not going to connect with the Bentley person. And that's all right. Like I want to, but I think it was, is it Simon Sinek, Golden Circle? You're not going to do business with everyone. You're going to do business with the people who believe what you believe. That's it. And to get to that, you have to share your authentic self, honest to a fault. This is what I am. I'm a bit of this and I'm a lot of that. I am not a corporate guy, 25 years in the corporate world. You look at my resume, I'm all suit and tie. That's not who I really am. Now, I'm not trying to change it up. I was never that. Folks who worked with me know this. But the point is, that was what connected with the clients. It wasn't that I sent the 14-page white paper explaining the analytics of how it worked. It was that I took the 14-page white paper and gave them 3 bullet points that explained it from Iron Man's perspective. And they understood it. And so that it's silly, but I'm trying to make the point of you being you becomes the connective tissue. So being honest to a fault is authentic. It's embracing yourself. It's accepting yourself. There's a little bit of, you got to really be comfortable in your own skin here. And you didn't used to be. In the old world of a career where you just had to fill out the slot, have the right skill sets, work your way up the chain of command, and you become your boss's seat in 5 years, you didn't have to be you back then. In fact, they didn't want you to be you. And I would argue in many of the top corporate worlds, like where I came from, they don't want you to be you. But in the world of tomorrow, it's going to be, I'm doing business with folks I want to do business with. And I want to do business with them because I know who they are. I might not really know Connie Steele, but if I listen to every one of her podcasts, guess what? I'm going to know Connie Steele. And that's the thing. You're a great example of it, Connie. You're sharing, you're bringing information, and your style of approach is going to get a certain number of people or a certain type of person for you. That's the key. And sharing, that becomes the leverage. I don't just want information. I want Connie's version of the information. I can buy AI from anybody. I want Marc's version of it. I want the person that I'm dealing with is the one that's going to be the one I like. And how do you get across? This is no different from making friends in high school. I've got to be, you remember back in high school, there's the pot smoking crowd and there's the jock crowd and then there's the pretty girl crowd. And you had to figure out, well, okay, what crowd am I in? It's the same thing. We're back there again. It's high school all over again in a digital world. And a lot of these folks that came through the corporate system especially are really ill at ease with that. And I don't blame them. I understand why. But it doesn't change the fact that the world has changed and you need to get with it now. I have to be me and you have to know who I am or there's zero chance you're going to do business with me.
I totally agree. And so how has your definition of career success evolved from your early days in the workforce to now?
Sure. So like most kids coming out of school, my early goals were to make money, right? I wanted to get out, make a live on my own, have a couple of bucks to rub together. And that was it. I would argue I even traded some of who I was to go make money and do the corporate thing for a bit. But over time, what matters to you changes. You already know this. People they get married, they have kids, whatever it may be. They start to recognize their real talents and skills, or they develop ones they didn't used to have, whatever it may be. For me, I never realized I was always the communicator guy. I liked it. I always liked it. That's why I was in a band. That's why I was a DJ on campus radio. And that's why I was in sales all those years. Once I came to understand that, how it changed for me was, okay, I want to do more of that. And I did for a lot of years. But I also recognized that financial freedom became a goal for me. It wasn't just about, it's not about how much money you make, because you could make $20 million a year. But if you have to go to a job to make it, same. And so entrepreneurship was always an interest. Thinking outside the box, playing outside the box, that was always how I tried to approach life. And that's, as I've gone on, I've become, I think, a little more of that. And sometimes that'll hurt you, but sometimes that'll help you. So to answer your question, I was very corporate in the beginning. I would argue that I'm less so now, but I also wasn't as personality driven earlier on, because that's, again, the corporate thing. And now I think I am more. So my goals, I'm a family guy. And again, if you're going to succeed at the top levels of business and finance, most of those people are not family people. I'm not judging. Many of them are. But for me, I think the family is primary. And so trade-offs will be made, whatever I need to do. This whole Zoom school thing is a great example where people are like, okay, a lot of women are leaving the workforce to go take care of the kids when they don't have to, but they want to because their children need them. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, and there's a whole podcast for you there. But the point is, you need to know how you've evolved and changed. What mattered to you early on, for me, it was money and making a name for myself. Later on, I'm not about that at all. It's about being independent and being a little more of what you want to be doing. And I think a lot of people are going through that change right now. This whole great reset, as I'll call it, has given many people a chance to rethink of what they're about, how exactly their goals have changed, and how their skills are not being utilized or should be being utilized.
Agreed. Well, and to close, what advice would you tell your younger self?
I would say the same thing I said to you earlier, of embrace who you are as early as possible. Everyone knows who they are underneath. No matter who you are listening right now, go back to when you were 10 years old. At 10 years old, I would argue you have a pretty good idea what kind of person you are, what you liked, what you wanted to do when you grew up, all that bit. Some version of that is what everyone's going to now, right? So for me, it's the communication thing. For you, I mean, heck, you've been doing a great job communicating through these podcasts. I feel like everyone is touching base with their inner kid right now and figuring out, how do I pivot? That might be inside a job, and there's nothing wrong with that. It might be outside the job too.
And finally, what's the best way listeners can connect with you?
That's, honestly, Connie, probably through social. I would argue maybe Twitter or Instagram. I'm on Marc Angelos NYC on all the socials. Anvictus is my company as a website as well, Anvictus.com. But it doesn't matter. I'm not trying to sell anything. I think if people do what they want to be doing for themselves and they get some value out of this, then I'm happy with that. The goal here is simply that people move themselves forward.
Thanks so much, Marc, for being on the show today and helping us better understand how to build rapport, true rapport with people, which is about transparency and vulnerability as your differentiator for you versus playing the me game.
Thank you, Connie. It's an honor to be on here. I appreciate it.
In our new normal, it's all about being agile and adapting. That's what we've personally had to do on this show, as we plan, scrap, and revise content to deliver pod courses that offer whatever advice is needed most in the current and ever-changing business climate. And building new relationships, or rapport, as we know Marc likes to call it, isn't easy when you don't have the in-person body cues that can help you better engage and feel connected to others. It can be more intimidating now to reach out to coworkers or managers inside your company that you've never really interacted with. And if your role involves prospecting for potential clients, shifting from an offline world to a fully digital world might not feel so seamless as it does for others. Regardless, we're all human, and humans need connection. So when we're faced with challenges like having to transfer face-to-face interactions to digital ones, we have to be willing to test, learn, and adapt to figure out which approach works best to maintain business and career momentum. It comes down to establishing trust, which is built by being authentic in who you are, transparent in your intentions, open about your vulnerabilities, and reciprocal in your actions. And then it's about the value exchange and always putting the needs of others before yourself, even so far as consistently reaching out to someone with helpful intangibles and expecting nothing in return. Because relationships are capital, and in the business of work, they're more valuable than hard skills. In this unpredictable and almost fully digital world, we can all use more genuine relationships and far fewer transactional ones. Thanks for listening to Strategic Momentum, To connect with Marc, you can reach him on LinkedIn by searching for Marc Angelos or find him on social at Marc Angelos NYC. That's Marc with a C, Angelos NYC. If you've liked what you heard, please share this podcast with friends and colleagues. And of course, we always appreciate ratings and reviews. To get show notes, links, and more tips and advice from this episode, you can visit us at strategicmomentum.co. There, you can contribute your own tips and help add to the great work and career advice we've collected over the years. Don't forget to follow Strategic Momentum on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Instagram. You can also join the Facebook community by searching Strategic Momentum in groups. I'm Connie Steele, and you've been listening to the Strategic Momentum Podcast.